And good evening. Welcome to tonight's broadcast of the Hero program. I'm your host, George Pardos, and I hope that you guys are having a good evening. We just got off with Sports Church and our fine host, John Kremering, and the crew. So, one of the things I wanted to cover tonight, and one of the things that we're starting to, and especially in January, we've got a wellness program that we're starting, and especially with we've got some announcements that we're making, especially with Up Health and some of the other people. So, and one of the things that we're dealing with is that we're going to be teaching this month is we're teaching some techniques about healing and about not just with physical therapy, but also mental health. And we're also starting this week. We have our VRS fitness show that is launching this week for you guys that are interested. Troy Tucano is one of my fighters down in Australia. He's going to be starting a show this week on fitness and boxing and MMA. And so we're going to launch it this week and look forward to it. What I wanted to talk to you about today is one of the issues that we're having is that that people don't realize that you're doing it, and that is that's is how we heal is as important as how we heal is always as important as how we got hurt and how things went bad. So I'm going to give you an example. There are, one of the things that people talk about is, we look at boxing, and I use boxing because you guys are, pretty familiar with it. Sometimes you get in you ever seen a boxer or a fighter that winds up losing a match and he's never the same about that ever again? And you wonder is, part of it is because they don't take the time to heal correctly after after they got hurt. They didn't take the time to heal correctly. Or even a football player that had a catastrophic injury doesn't come back the same. And so I'm going to give you an example. There's a wide receiver for Dallas, and I want to see what his last name was, Pearson, and it wasn't Drew Pearson. Hold on a second, I want to look this up. Cowboys, 1976. Hold on. Okay, so there's a guy that played for Dallas, and I'm sorry, his name was Percy Howard, and he in Super Bowl he caught a touchdown pass, and he almost caught the winning pass for the he was very just very close to catching a the winning the winning touchdown. He came this close, but he had a knee injury, and he was never the same again. They tried to they tried to get they tried to get him from hold on a second. They tried to get him from only being able to to get his knee better. He went to training camp, but he was never the same ever again after he couldn't they couldn't run the routes right. And the reason I'm saying this is that one of the things we talked tonight about on Sports Church was that Derrick Rose had came back, and when Derrick Rose came back and he had a surgery, his surgery wouldn't have been in 2006, 2007 wouldn't have been able to have been he wouldn't have been able to come back. The surgery wasn't the same, and that was just 10 years ago. One of the things that one of the problem that happens, and especially with athletes, and especially with veterans, how you get hurt is important. How you heal is just as important. And one of the things that we've noticed, and a lot of my approach to these, to the show, is that, I've coached in college, I've coached, at Division One, I've coached in, guys that have been in UFC, and I use my experiences to, to help. And I say this is that sometimes people suffer an injury, and it completely changes them forever. They're not the same for a long time. And so, you have to then heal to take the next step. And there are guys that, they suffer an injury and they come back and they're fine. Plenty of them, but there are other guys that get hurt, and once they suffer their injury, they're never fine. They never heal. They never get, and they're one of the two things, the reasons for that, it's twofold. Number one is they're scared. And number two is they change their technique because they don't trust their recovery. And I'm going to say that again. There's a test that you take after, we had this thing at Ohio State, it was called day one. And so when you got back on the mat, what we did is we tested you through a series of range of motions to see what you could do, and not what you couldn't do, what you could do. And so we expected, for you, if you were at this level, you were able to do these movements. And a lot of that, what happens is that if I'll use my own, for example, in 1990, I hurt my knee. Because I hurt my knee and I came back too quick, my offense was off because I had to protect my knee. And so I became more of a defensive wrestler. Well, that one of the things that happens with that is that you're used to doing something in a certain way, and then you have to adjust it to protect the injury. It's the same thing physically. There are people that suffer from PTSD that when something happens traumatically, they stay out of those situations. Like, I know a friend of mine that he will not go to any parties anymore. He doesn't feel comfortable around people. He goes into a crowded room and he withdraws. He just does not like being around people. There's too much anxiety for him. And as a result of it, he stays away from those situations. And I say that because one of the things that we avoid when we get hurt, we know that we've suffered an injury, we do pain avoidance. And what you do is either, you do most things to avoid pain or to get pleasure. Well, when you're hurt, you're going to avoid pain because you don't want to do that anymore. Well, we do the same thing when we heal. And one of the things I tell people is if you heal a joint, if you heal, let's say you have a shoulder injury. Well, one of the things that usually happens is you adjust your technique, you quit benching, you quit doing squats, you're doing the things that puts pressure on it. It's the same thing when you have an internal injury. You avoid those scenarios that put pressure on it. So a lot of people and I say this with, we're dealing with people, with veterans with PTSD, is they stay away from scenarios that put pressure on them. They don't like hanging out with civilians. They only want to talk with other veterans. They only deal with people that are veterans themselves because they don't want to talk about it. And I'll give you an example. How many times have you heard about we used to, call them the Uncle Joe scenarios where, Yeah, I have that one uncle that, Uncle Nick, Uncle Joe, that was in Vietnam or Korea. It just didn't want to talk about it. And they didn't bring it up because it was too painful for them. Well, that is the kind of scenarios that you deal with when you're not healed, you're not recovered. And the reason I bring this up is if you are going through therapy, if you're going through any kind of therapy, whether it's mental or physical, you have to understand what is the injury that you suffered, and then what is the injury that not only did you suffer, but what is the pressure that that injury is going to bring to you. Let me say that again. What is the pressure that injury is going to bring to you? So if you've got survivor's guilt every time you're going to go out and do something, you might like say, well, man, I shouldn't be here. My friends are dead, and I don't want to be here. That bothers some people. That's why a lot of veterans become withdrawn. That's the best way I could say it. They don't go out to events. They sit behind because it's too painful for them, because they're dealing with the surviving of an event that their friends are dead and now they're there. And so I say to you, get the help that you need in both areas. Um, and it's the same thing with, if you have a traumatic injury. If you have a bad knee or a bad back or a bad shoulder, you don't do those things that put pressure on it. Now, I understand that there's a lot of things that goes with that, but a lot of people are dealing with certain injuries that um are just, I'm not going to use the word traumatic because that's not the thing, but you know there you have two kinds of injuries. You have a stress injury and you have a dynamic injury. Dynamic injury is, or concussion injury, is where it's not from repetition. It just happened. You got punched in the head, and boom, you have a black eye. That's not from repetition. But CTE, which is repetitive injury from getting punched over, or playing football, or getting the jarring hit. So you have to understand how that heals. And we don't do a good enough we don't do a good enough job with that. The other one of the other issues behind it too is that um people are not going to um um people are not going to do certain things because they're painful. But not only are they painful, but they're not only are they painful, but they trigger something from their past. They trigger something from past engagement. And so as a result of it, you don't um but who do you trust, Brian? That is a very um that's a very hard thing to deal with. You've got to trust the process, or you've got to trust somebody that is a pastor, or a counselor, or somebody that you can have interaction with. And let me tell you this: if you start going to therapy, if you start going to seeing a counselor, you don't have to stick with that counselor. If you don't like that counselor, go see somebody else. Go to another counselor. Go to somebody that you have an interaction with. And one of the things that I'm gonna say this, and please, I'm not beating up the VA on this, but one of the things that is not taught is what's called post course knowledge. So if you have studied psychology, or if you've studied psychotherapy, or any of those, any of those studies, Post-course knowledge, it dictates what you should acquire from going to that, going to that school, or going to that counseling session, going through therapy. So if you have I'll give you an example. Radial movement of your radial movement of your rotator cuff. So if you are going to therapy, if you're going to a physical therapist, they're going to tell you what is the radial, how much radial movement you should have after you're done, post, um, pre-surgery, post-surgery. And they're going to be able to tell you, I and what I mean by radial movement is this to this to this to out. Now that's radial movement there. But if you're taking therapy for you're for PTSD, what they're going to tell you post course knowledge is that if you're going through that therapy, what are the neural pathways that they want to heal in order for you to feel normal? Let me say that again. What are the neural pathways they need to heal? Now, if you have TBI, some of those are not going to heal. What you're going to do is you're going to have to rewire your brain. Big girl, you're just jealous. There's two types of men in this world: those who grow, those who grow beards, and little girls. And by the way, tomorrow I'm going to shoot. Just so you know, I'm going to shoot your video tomorrow with your shirt. I got it right here. I got the shirt. Hold on. This is for Veteran Trash Talk. It would behoove you not to bet against those degenerates over there. No, but so when you retrain your brain, and this is where we've had these discussions before, where you retrain your brain, imagine your brain as a muddy road. And that, and you're a car driving down the muddy road, and then about 20 feet to the side is you see smooth pavement. What you're trying to do is you're trying to tell your brain to move that car 20 feet to the right or to the left and get back on a smooth road and rebuild that that neural pathway. Now, there's a couple ways of doing it. One is through pharmaceuticals. There's a few compounds that have been proven that will rebuild your gray matter. One of them is being choline. It's the only branch chain amino acid. Hold on, let me read this. Been thrown into inpatient mental health service because of counseling therapy. Physical therapy has been good to me. Brian, you're going to have to get a hold of a counselor that tries some. It's called cognitive. See if you've had an MCI, which is called a mild cognitive impairment. Look at those and see that. If you want, reach out to us. I'll give you some advice on some things you can do. But with choline, and there's some pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals. Choline is one of those things that have been proven to rebuild the neural pathways in the brain. L-arginine has been the same. There are certain compounds that have been proven to do so. And so you have to then approach that in a manner to say, okay, listen, I'm going to need help pharmaceutically wise. These are the things that I can do. One of the things that, going back to, is you need to take an MCI test, mild cognitive impairment. The Montreal test is something that will show where you're at. And again, if it goes to repairing neural pathways, you've got to work on those. And that's why I tell people that nothing is static. You've got to work on those things. You've got to work on, if you've got a TBI, what caused the TBI? Is it causing you frontal lobe dysplasia? Is it causing you to, Do you need pharmaceutical care? Do you need rehabilitation? Do you need bariatric chamber therapy? What is it that you need? Do you need an immersion stem cell? Do you need, alpha stem? Whatever it is, you need, you need to work on that. So again, this is why I say about recovery is you've got to work on recovery in the same, in the same thing that you get, physically. And I said that the other day is that, sometimes if you get hurt benching, you might not be able to bench. Let's say your bench is 300 pounds. Well, you don't get back, after an injury and start at 300 pounds again or 250. You might need to start at 20 pounds. You might need to only do the movement of the bar or half the bar or even just, you start slowly and then you build up to that. And the problem is, and I'm going to close on this. I'm not going to go too much longer because I think we've covered this, but as this is the first show back. We have a tendency in the veteran community to make fun of those people seeking help, and you wonder why they don't get help. Well, if you're making fun of somebody that is trying to get better, it's like making fun of the fat guy at the gym that is on the treadmill. He's trying to do something about it, but you're making fun of him because he's on the treadmill. Well, Jesus Christ, what the fuck do you want him to do? I mean, he's trying to get better, and then we eat our own. We sit there and eat our own when it comes to getting veteran help, or and instead of just saying, hey, listen, I understand you're broken. Let's see what we can do for you. Let's see what we can do to help you out. We sit there and making fun of them because, there's a stigma assigned with mental health. And it's sad. And I think that if we're really going to go out and help the veteran community, if we're going to go out and help the veteran community, we need to decide what that help is going to look like. And if somebody reaches out, what that looks like also. Because I got to tell you, the scariest picture I've seen, there's a picture of Robin Williams. And, when he committed suicide, that kind of hit me kind of hard. And it's just like Bob Saget today hit me kind of hard too, because he's only 65. But when Robin Williams committed suicide, there's a picture of him like 2 days prior to it. He is smiling and happy. And I'm like, if somebody that like Robin Williams can commit suicide, all of us are vulnerable. Anthony Bourdain, I mean, you take a look at the people that have committed suicide. They've been rich. They've been, you would think that they were happy. Kate Spade. I mean, all of them, you think that they're happy and they're not. And so we have to take that stigma away from people to say, hey, listen, if you're hurt, we'll listen to you. But it's important to understand that if you go out to heal, you need to learn how to heal at a level that brings you peace, and that you also want to. And again, I'm gonna write this down or say it again. Post-course work. What do you want to accomplish after you've gone to therapy? What triggers do you want to take care of? And that's the most important thing. And it's the same thing if you're going through physical therapy. What do you want to be able to do after you get done? And that's important. Anyway, that is all that we have for tonight. We will be back to our normal schedule. Ron Ripley is on tomorrow with the Replonians, and we will talk again to you shortly. Thank you again for listening to Veteran Radio Syndicate, and we will see you shortly.
The recognized symbol of excellence in online entertainment.